Hey, my name is Monica, and in fifth grade, we went to the Orlando Science Center for a field trip. I was excited for multiple reasons. One, I was a huge science lover. Two, my teacher was an absolute bully whom I hated, and luckily could get away from for most of the day. She would make up lies and get me in trouble with my parents, and then smirk the next day when she saw bruises on me. But lastly, I had found out that the day before my crush and I were going to be in the same group of seven, guided by a parent known for not caring too much about what you do as long as you don't die. My crush Sam was absolutely beautiful. A sweet boy who was blessed well by puberty over the summer. His shoulders wide, his waist slim, his hair was a brilliant ginger shade, complemented by his jade green eyes and cute dark freckles, carefully painted across the bridge of his nose. He was quick on his feet and just as quick to make a joke. And let's be honest, who can resist a cute redhead, boy or girl? Not me. We get off the bus, and Sam and I immediately dive into the beauty that was the Orlando Science Center. I had no idea he was a fellow nerd. We were casual friends, enough not to make things awkward, but not enough to know much about each other. So discovering he adored science was great for me. I remember messing with pulley systems with him, venturing through the human body floor and making terrible puns along the way. He rubbed his hands along the giant ball of electricity on one floor and immediately rubbed it on my head to try and get my hair to stand on end. And I couldn't help but notice how his hands stayed on my collarbone a bit too long after. Lunch came and I looked at my stomach was fluttering the entirety of the trip and I could even fathom eating with how jittery it was. Mrs. Sargent, my bitch-ass teacher, demanded to know why I wasn't eating, and was unsatisfied by I'm not hungry. You won't get to leave the room until you eat something. Everything. The planetarium is next. You better eat if you want to go and see the movie, she sneered, and stuck to her words, forcing me to down the raisins, I hate them, and chocolate milk, I'm lactose intolerant, but finally I was freed, back to an excited Sam. Now, for anyone who does not know what a planetarium is, it's a giant dome-shaped theater. Imagine walking outside, looking up, and the sky was playing A Bug's Life or something. It was just like that. It was absolutely beautiful. This trip included a showing about the stars above, the constellations, light pollution, all the fun facts. Sam was a huge space lover, planned on working at NASA eventually, and succeeded last time I checked Facebook, and was entirely geeked out about this showing. I was inspired by his love for it and became excited as well. I simply wanted to watch him fawn over the showing. It's too cute when people do that. We found our seats and we were immediately plunged into a darkness I didn't even know was possible. I sat back in the uncomfortable chair, encased in the crazy spins and stomach-lurching turns as the show shot us through the cosmos. The narrator had a smooth, deep voice similar to the great Morgan Freeman himself. But it couldn't trump the soft squeaks my crush expelled as he whispered space facts to me, the cool tip of his nose touching my blushing cheek. He was so close, going on about black holes, tying it all off with an excited, "Isn't it amazing?" whispered in my ear. I mumbled an agreement, my stomach full of butterflies, threatening to burst through the show and disrupt everything. Was it too hot in there, or was it just me? I finally worked up the courage to look at Sam, noses touching. The scene around us lit with thousands of stars, gently illuminating his face, yet reflecting brilliantly in his eyes. After a moment he whispered, "I think it's beautiful." And I could tell he was not talking about the stars. He moved, millimeters being covered at a snail's pace closer to my mouth. This was going to be my first kiss, and I couldn't imagine a better scene as a kid. Just me, a cute boy, and a sky full of stars. I was so excited. I could feel nerves build up in my throat and the butterflies in my stomach. Wait, no, those were not nerves. Instead, I proceeded to retch, causing Sam to lean away before vomiting in his fucking lap. The heat, fluttering stomach, all the beginning of a stomach bug, which was given fuel when I ate lunch. I vomited in my crush's lap, guys. I honestly hope Sam doesn't remember me like ever. To those asking, I remember this in detail because not only was it so goddamn traumatic, but it was one of the best days of my life as well. It ignited a love for science for me, plus, who could forget an entire day you got to spend with your crush? And yeah, I stalked him on Facebook to see what he does now. Nothing too major, if I remember. He actually simply works at the NASA Visitor Center, helping hosting school trips and stuff, but he still sort of followed his dream.
You know, sometimes the truth is even stranger than fiction, especially if you had a dark secret in your life that would put you in danger if it were exposed. Such was my case, and this is my story. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 17 years old. I live with my mom. My dad passed away before I was born, so my mom had to raise me all by herself. My mom knew everything about me, my school studies, my friends. She had certain rules that I was supposed to follow, like eating outdoors was forbidden, and I can't be friends with someone unless she knew everything about them first, and so on. I thought these rules were somewhat paranoid, and I asked her why she placed such restrictions on making friends. Her reply was simply that you can't trust anyone nowadays. But that wasn't a very satisfying answer. And when I asked her what it meant, she didn't say anything further. As I was growing up, these rules mystified me even more, and I couldn't help but wonder if they had anything to do with my father, whom I knew nothing about. Mom always said he was a troublemaker, and she told me that everything would be clear to me in time. One holiday, I joined a new band. We held a lot of concerts. It was the best. I was good at playing music and singing. When we went camping, we met some students from other countries. We made a lot of new friends and had fun together. We even had a chance to increase our band's fame and reputation. After our first performance at camp, an Asian girl approached me. She hugged me, saying, "Charlotte, I missed you a lot." Taken aback, I asked, "Do I know you?" She surprised me again by saying, "Don't you recognize me? I'm Mary, your friend." I smiled and replied, "You must be mistaken. I don't know you." After insisting that she was indeed my friend, she excused herself and ran back to join her friends. Weird. Though, now that I think about it, I have often had an eerie feeling that someone was watching me wherever I went. I tried to shake off this feeling many occasions, but I never could. I would just tell myself that it must be my imagination. That night, we all went into the jungle. It was a jungle tour. It was very dark, and I got separated from the group and found myself alone, surrounded by trees. I called out to my friends, but no one heard me. Suddenly, I bumped into someone, a girl it seemed, and I apologized. When I turned around to look at her, I was shocked to see, well, myself, or my double. It was as if I was looking in a mirror. "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm Charlotte," she replied simply. "That's impossible. I'm Charlotte," I said assertively. "Are you with us here at the campsite?" "Yes," she said. I asked her which way back to the campsite. She pointed in one direction and we headed back. As we were walking, her phone rang. It was her father. He was worried about her and was just making sure she was okay. We arrived at our tents without incidents, and I said, "It was really nice to meet you, Charlotte. I'll see you tomorrow." I felt a strong connection to the girl for some reason. Then I realized that I had forgotten my bag, and I went to get it. And again, I had that ominous feeling that I'm being watched. Suddenly, something hit me on the head. When I woke up, I found myself sitting in a car, surrounded by people wearing sunglasses, and I was really frightened. "Who are you people?" I demanded to know. "And what do you want from me?" One man told me that my dad was the reason they kidnapped me. When I told him that my dad had died a long time ago, he just laughed. Then he sprayed something on my face and I lost consciousness. When I woke up later, the other Charlotte was tied up beside me. One of the men seemed confused, seeing two of me, and he asked his boss which of us was the girl they were looking for. Suddenly, I heard someone shout, "Freeze! Don't move!" The police had come. They came out from the tree line. Surrounding the car, they arrested the men. Then they untied us both. Someone appeared looking very worried. The other Charlotte started coming too and asked where she was and what was going on. Then she saw her dad and she ran to him. Her dad then looked at me and asked for my name and my mother's name. When I told him, he said he knew who I was and said to send his regards to my mom and to tell her that he was still keeping her secret. Then he gave me a medal and hugged me, saying that he wasn't sure if we would ever meet again. I was still staring at him, looking confused, so he smiled and he asked me where my father was, and I told him that my father was dead. And then he said that that was their agreement, he and my mom, that he was only trying to protect me and the other Charlotte, who happened to be my twin sister. He said he got into some trouble in his line of work. Some people threatened to kill us, so he and my mom decided to split us up. She took you, and I took your twin sister, he said. We did this to keep you safe. I named your twin Charlotte, just the same as you. I was still feeling a bit overwhelmed at this point. This was preposterous. I couldn't believe it. Suddenly, I heard someone calling me. "Charlotte, wake up! It's time for a trip. You must have been having a nightmare because you were screaming." I woke up to find myself in the tent with my friend. When I went outside the tent, I stopped. Right in front of me, staring me in the eyes, was a girl who was my mirror image. I don't follow the news much. International crisis, crimes, kidnapping, all these things just fill me with dismay. It's as if our world is a dangerous jungle. And I don't like that feeling, because I'm a peaceful girl who likes to avoid trouble. Little did I know that my peaceful world was going to be shaken by one of these sad events. I'm Marsha, and I'm 18 years old. I live with my parents and my little sister Marilyn. My mother often warned me to be alert and avoid dangerous situations. She told me that peaceful people can live in a peaceful world if they choose to do so, but that wasn't entirely true. I was at a friend's birthday party once, and we were laughing, eating, playing, and having a great time. I wasn't paying attention to my phone much, but when I chanced to look at it, I saw that Mom had called me over 1,000,000 times around midnight. She was clearly worried about me being out so late, so I decided that I needed to rush home. I was afraid to take a taxi alone, but I needed to hurry home, so I walked out to the main street, which was very dimly lit, and saw a taxi nearby. But when I got closer to it, I saw that all its windows were tinted, and I didn't feel at ease. I made to look for another one, but then the taxi driver opened the front door and smiled. His elderly age and his friendly smile disarmed me and gave me a lulling sense of security. So I asked him to take me to my home, and I jumped into the back seat. He asked me why I was walking alone on a dimly lit street that late at night, and I told him about the party and my losing track of time. He warned me not to walk late at night again, because that was a dangerous time to be about. He asked me if I had heard about the serial killer named Bradley. I said that I did, but that I didn't know what he looked like. At that point, he laughed, and I heard the 4 doors suddenly lock themselves. He looked at me and said, "My name is Bradley. Now you know what I look like. It's so nice to meet you." I screamed for him to stop the taxi and let me out. He stated simply that the simple mistakes can have the largest impact on our lives sometimes. He boasted that I would be a perfect addition to complete his skull collection. In a panic, I grabbed his seatbelt and began strangling him with it. I demanded that he stop the car, but he refused. I began choking him harder and harder until he eventually lost control of the car. The car careened off the road, flipped a few times, and landed upside down. Luckily, I was still conscious and was able to get out of the overturned car. He tried to grab me as I was crawling out, but I managed to escape. I ran back up the main road and flagged a car carrying a family in it. Once I reached home, I relayed my horrendous experience to Mom, and she took me to the police station. After listening to my story and my description of the guy, the police promised to investigate and to catch the criminal as soon as possible. That experience scarred me for life, but I know now that I have to be strong if I am to live on. Some days later, I received a message from an anonymous sender that said, "Be ready for the next ramble. You haven't seen the last of me yet."